Take Five podcast, where we will be discussing films of small and large productions. My guest today is an Irish YouTuber and filmmaker with a total of 5 films under his belt, with a multitude of awards. Please welcome today's guest, Sean Treacy.
How are we doing? How are we doing, Kieran? I'm absolutely chuffed to be here. Just honestly, I'm so grateful that you want to chat about my films. That means the world to me, and I just want to thank you for having me on here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I am feeling great, and I mean, honestly, the pleasure, the feelings are mutual. I mean, I love your films. After seeing them, I was just sort of like, this is something different from what I'm used to seeing. I mean, it was one of the first short films I saw, because it was only recently I kind of made the transition into watching short films, and yours was one of the first I saw, and I saw Rue, and I was just like, I actually want to do some research, see what else is done. And I found out you were a similar age to me, and I'm just like, the stuff that this kid's creating is just amazing.
Dude, thank you so much. That means the absolute world to me. And I'm chuffed that the first one you saw is Rue. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how these ones kind of like, well, Brother and Rue in particular, I don't know how they find their way to people's like watch lists the way they do. Brother kind of blew up randomly, and I suppose Rue did a similar thing, although maybe on a different scale. But yeah, I'm so grateful that the films have been able to just kind of get out there into the world. It still feels surreal for me. I never would be seen by the people who said, and that's class to hear that Rue was the first one you saw. And yeah, dude, I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Now, I mean, obviously, creating great films is one thing, but then what got you into creating films? Because that's always interesting.
Yes, dude. Good question. Good question. I would have to say that what got me personally into making films would have had to have been, well, I do acting basically at the same time as I'm doing all of this filmmaking, and that's actually where everything started for me with acting. So I was on a Tesco advertisement set when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I was acting in a Tesco ad, for TV, and it was my first time on a set, and it wasn't a film set or a TV show set, but still there were cameras, people, an atmosphere, and I was just in awe of everything. I was in awe of the bus that they used for food. I was in awe of the energy with the camera people and the lights. The whole setup was just so magical for me, and I was completely just mesmerized is the word I always use for it. I was in awe of everything, and so I basically said, right, it's time to start looking into getting behind the camera a little bit more, because up until that point I'd always loved watching films, and I'd always really liked acting, and this was my first acting job. But damn, like as soon as I started getting behind the camera, I found so much excitement with it, dude. I can't explain the magic of going onto YouTube and watching a film riot video and watching a tutorial on a new effect and learning about filmmaking and all that kind of stuff, and getting into the world of cinema. Dude, it was a really exciting time. And I suppose over time, it started with me just making filming on my dad's camcorder, which I think happens to a lot of people. There was no editing or anything, and there was really no process. It was just filming anything which I saw. And then what really changed things was when I got an iPod Touch. So up until that point, I think I was editing videos on my dad's iMovie and filming them on that, just making anything I could think of. And then when I got my own iPod Touch and I started filming and editing videos on that changed the game for me. And I was able to make them on such a more regular basis. I was making videos with my friends every time I was going to their house. And yeah, dude, that was a really magical time for filmmaking. And I suppose over time since then, yeah, it's just been about kind of growing the equipment step by step, little by little, going through many joyful but also so many stressful experiences of not knowing what device to purchase, how to save up for a certain piece of kit and all that kind of stuff. Like the beginning, the first the world, how do you pay for an editing software? Where do you learn to use these softwares, etc.? But over time, you figure it out, and I suppose that's how I got into the world of filmmaking.
Now, if you had to pick one film that you've created so far, what would it have to be?
Ooh, big question. For me, my favorite film is Rue. So that's the one that you saw.
Yeah.
Now that could change because what I find is that you really have to wait quite a while after you've finished a film to really get clarity on it and to see whether you like it or not. Like
Mm.
new film, Broken Reflection, I have a series of scenes. I have no idea what's going on in it, to be honest, because like you're involved in so many aspects, specifically at this level. You're like involved in almost every aspect of the film that you've so much like mental notes on it and so much perceptions. You can't really see it from this. You haven't got clarity on it, and you can't see it from the perspective of an audience member. But over time, kind of, you start to gain that clarity again as you lose sight of like the little nitty gritty details that you once held, and so then you know whether or not you like it. And when I first finished Rue, I actually really didn't like it. I thought it was slow, maybe a bit boring. And then kind of when it was screened at the Fresh Film Festival final, where I was very luckily and thankfully titled Ireland's Young Filmmaker of the Year in 2019. At that final, when that film screened and the end credits rolled, I was like, I think I like that film. And then over time, my appreciation for it has grown. And I suppose the reason I like that film so much is because it really, what's so tough about filmmaking is trying to really bring your vision to life in a way that is still exciting, in a way that is accurate to what you actually wanted to tell initially. And I
Mm.
feel like I think I actually managed to do that with Rue. In fact, like when I was writing the script, sometimes what happens is you write a script and you're really excited about it, but the final product doesn't really live up to it in a way. With Rue, I felt it was vice versa almost. I felt like the script was like grand, but the actors
Mm.
and also I was very lucky to get like the music I did for that film, etc. Just very lucky in finding all of it, and yeah, I think it all really came together to bring another kind of level to what the script held. And I suppose, yeah, I just feel like that's the most honest film also that I made. It really comes from like not the specific details or events in my life, but it comes from kind of themes in my life as well. So it really feels like just like an honest representation, and it's just one I'm kind of like, yeah, quite proud of, and I just think it's accurate as to how I initially thought about it. So that's the long-winded answer of
That's
what your film
perfectly
is.
fine. How do you come up or decide on a story or a subject that you want to talk about?
Yeah. I suppose honestly I'm still figuring that out, and I wonder if I ever will actually land on a way in which, like, on a solid method of coming up with a story idea. Because right now I still approach almost every film differently. You know, I kind of sometimes I start with a theme and I build off of that. Other times I will start with characters and I'll build off of that. Usually what happened to me at first was there would be a plot, an event which I was really excited about, and I would want to then write a beginning or an end, or a beginning to that end, or something like that, and I would kind of build that out. But I see what's happening over time. I suppose the more seriously I take script writing and screenwriting, I find that it's really becoming about the themes and the characters. And yeah, so this time actually what's happening now in my current, I'm writing a feature film, co-writing a feature film, and it's very difficult, I suppose, coming up with those initial thoughts. But yeah, like what I did initially was I took my storyline, or like an event from my life, and I just flipped everything around, and kind of from there it's grown into this really bizarre, like something completely different to what was initially there. But I suppose, yeah, it was like this event in a way that built this story. And then from there we started looking at characters, and from there then we started looking at themes. And so while initially the event is what formed the story, what's actually forming the rest of the plot now, and what is actually like structuring the film, are the themes and the characters and the character arcs. So I suppose, yeah, that's a way in which you could come up with an initial story idea, take something interesting from your life and flip everything around and see what's happening, see what happens there. Or maybe like take your favorite story and flip the story of that, flip that narrative, which a lot of people do. And then you'll be surprised. Like you'll initially think to yourself, well, surely that's just a rip off of the initial story. But you will then, like, your story will grow in so many different directions when you do that. And that's what happened to me when I flipped a personal event of mine. So that's, I mean, every way is different. With Rue, I think it was just this idea of someone bottling up their emotions. And then with Brother, it was basically based on the theme of two young kids who are quite immature being forced together for a certain amount of time, and they just kind of have to like each other over time. That's what that idea was based around. So sometimes it's a theme, again, sometimes it's characters, sometimes it's an event. But you just gotta really like go away at it. And then sometimes the hardest part of an idea is like initially you've like the shiny idea syndrome where you like fall in love with it. You think this is the best thing ever, and then you start developing it, and things get slower, and you're not as excited about it anymore. But then like that's basically the dip, and that happens in every aspect of life: business, school, relationships, and filmmaking. And storytelling, for me in particular, where like you then realize, okay, this is a little harder or a little bit less exciting than I thought it would be, but it all picks up in the end. So just stick to it. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
How do you get around creative blocks?
Ooh, creative blocks. Yeah, they're not fun. I suppose what I tell myself is that they're really just gonna pass. You know what I mean? Like that's what I tell myself when I go through creative blocks. I really just kind of I keep going, you know. I think that's one thing I'm very grateful for, that I've kind of like grown over the years. I suppose it's just that self-discipline of just, I'm not feeling this right now, but I know that if I keep going, I will find something. I suppose I just don't. What happens to me is with how I schedule 6 to 1, I'm going to write from 11 to 1. No matter what happens in that amount of time, I'm just going to keep trying to go and go and go. And yeah, like what can happen with creative block is you hit that wall and then you just give up. But for me, I think what works is just you hit that wall, but just keep going. Like, don't stop writing, even if what you're writing has nothing to do with the story you're actually telling. You're just keeping that brain moving, and eventually you'll find like all guns are firing again, and then hopefully that'll link back to your initial story. That might sound a bit bizarre, but basically I just say keep going to people who are in creative block, and that's so hard to do. I completely get it. There's nothing worse than when you're editing and you're just like you're just like absolutely not finding any love or excitement in it at all, and then all of a sudden there's a little switch. Maybe you took a break for a glass of water, or maybe you added a certain song to it, and all of a sudden you are riding the wave of emotion. You are absolutely loving it. So it can, you know, I just say, yeah, as I mentioned, keep going, because that flow will come again. Because if you stop, that's only going to like make your brain more like relaxed and less urgent to work. And sometimes, you know, we can come up with great ideas when we're relaxed, but we also have to sit down and focus on what we're doing at sometimes as well. So I just say, yeah, keep going.
Now, obviously, with your latest film, Broken Reflection, that was something different, because I remember you saying when we were discussing this that it was your first one with a full team. However, what was your inspiration for Broken Reflection?
For anyone who doesn't know, it's a story about a social media influencer who basically he's committing very dangerous stunts, and he starts to realize through pretty major events in his life that what he's doing actually is he's doing in the world. And as soon as he tries to get out of it, he realizes that there are some people holding him back. And well, as a YouTuber, I suppose I've really recently specifically tried to focus on content that can just bring a bit more light to the world and be a bit more meaningful. And I've definitely found a little bit of a dip in, I suppose, in traffic on my YouTube channel, in like engagement on my YouTube channel. And so that kind of made me think like about what gets views online. Now, that's not to say that you can't do anything meaningful online and be successful, because I'm not great at the old titles and thumbnails, but we'll get there one day. I suppose like what's then was like what actually is like almost automatically successful online. And for me, that was extremism, like really taking things to the extreme. We see that with Logan Paul sometimes. We see that with a lot of vloggers. I don't want to name call anyone else. Logan Paul thankfully moved on, and I in my opinion, he's really started to make himself right. So I'm not in any way slighting him, but it does feel that sometimes, you know, the best stuff online, well, not the best stuff online, but the stuff that gets the most amount of views is the most extreme stuff. And I said, well, what about a short film where someone is like, again, this was like a film where the initial idea was based off of an event, you could say, where there was a influencer who is committing extreme stunts, but then gradually begins to see that what they're doing is actually not really helping the world in the way they thought it was. So they're getting a lot of views, etc., and they're really like inspiring people. But like, what if they begin to see that this is actually having a negative effect, and instead of them continuing on just for the money and the statistics, what happens when they try to get out of this situation? And while the film definitely, like, the story then kind of like turn into something almost, well, not completely different, but it did definitely change in shape over time. That was the basically initial idea, and that was, I suppose, rooted a little bit from my own personal experience as a YouTuber. But yeah, that's where the inspiration for Broken Reflection came. Yeah.
Now, for anyone who hasn't seen the film, here is the trailer.
Welcome to my channel. You're obviously new here. I'm Aiden, and this is my life. Now, instead of displaying a series of extravagant clips here in order to make you stick around and subscribe, I thought I'd just give you a message.
Oh my god! Woo!
What if I told you there was merely 24 hours left for your heart to beat? What would you do?
I wasn't gonna do it. There is a limit, Joy.
Take these thoughts and see if you insert them in your day-to-day life. You don't. And I honestly believe that it's about time you do. That's what I'm here for.
As we were just discussing, that trailer was from Sean's latest film, Broken Reflection. Now, after watching the film, I could see and understand the message that we just discussed. What was it like creating that, actually creating that film and going through the process?
Yeah, 100%. Like, the production on that was very different to anything else I've ever done, in many ways, because with Brother, which was, so Blood, Sweat and Tears was my first official short film, and then Brother was where I was like, okay, I think I'll write a script for this one, because Blood, Sweat and Tears was just like a bunch of ideas in my head I wanted to turn into a film. Brother, I decided I'll try and write a script, and I'll get more actors involved in this one. And when I did that, I had the best time filming Brother. And then with Rue, I was taking it a bit more seriously, and the story was definitely a bit more serious, but I still had quite like a solid amount of fun, although it was definitely like, you know, the story required us to be a little bit more serious on set, which is always grand, you know. And then Broken Reflection was like the first time. So like, I suppose you could, when you say creating, we could go all the way back to the initial process. Broken Reflection was, again, I don't know about the actual film. I don't know, like, if I like it or not, etc. Making this, because Brother to Rue, and you could include Spark in that, they were, I suppose, they were films where it was very much like I was just sticking with my friends, I was doing everything myself. Broken Reflection is where I decided, okay, this time I'm actually going to hire a musician, and this time I'm actually going to hire a camera operator / director of photography, and I'm actually going to go through an agency to find actors this time. Not that the actors I was working with were in any way bad, because I used Johnny Harkin, and the ones I'd worked before were so talented, but I just wanted to basically test myself and see how professional can I actually be, because there's one point in my career where I'm going to have to start doing this. It might as well be now. And initially I was so daunted by it all, especially when I decided to act as the lead myself. I said, right, Sean, you are writing, directing, editing, and acting in the lead as this. You're being a bit ridiculous. But it honestly was, first of all, nowhere near as hard as I thought it would be. And that not only goes for the actual process of making it, which I suppose I really overthought in my head, and my the actors then, I actually knew a lot of the actors already, but still I had hired them through a lot of like through an acting agency that actually I attend myself. And yeah, that was just, again, such a blissful experience. So I suppose creating that film was definitely like, I kind of, as I mentioned, became more professional in the process of making it, but at the same time it was so much easier than I thought it would be, and I'm really grateful for that. It was such a pleasure to make. Yeah, that's how creating Broken Reflection was for me.
Which filmmaker, come director, come auteur, would you say has inspired you the most, and why?
Christopher Nolan, full stop. Like, that man is the top of my list. You see, this is what I find very interesting. You see, a lot of people would take in a lot of media when they grow up, and then that form of media almost comes out in their form of storytelling,
Yeah.
right? But with me, it almost seems completely the other. Who, and also then eventually stories I'm telling now are all very human. Not that Doctor Who or Christopher Nolan movies aren't, but there's no sci-fi involved, and maybe that's just because of budget. But there's never really a will for me to actually like make a sci-fi story, and maybe there will be one day. But yeah, so I couldn't really say that those are storytelling, but in terms of just what like inspiring me to like to at least try and pull off a certain scene, that's what Christopher Nolan has inspired me to do. Scenes like rising from the well in The Dark Knight Rises, or scenes like the waves in the waves that are meant to be mountains in Interstellar, or the and yeah, just so much moments like that in Christopher Nolan's films, even to this day, makes me go like, they really hit me in terms of this is what you can pull off with cinema, and I aspire to do the same for the rest of my life.
Interesting. What I noticed in your films is that they are all similar, but I felt that with Broken Reflections, it was slightly different in the sense that that one's about YouTube, whereas with your others, you're talking about a specific theme, and it's all more personal. Well, no, not the sense that it's a specific theme, but in the fact that it felt more personal.
Definitely.
100%. Yeah.
I get exactly saying. Yeah. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
How can I word this? What was your why did you make that decision to talk about YouTube?
Well, I suppose, yeah, great question, dude. I suppose for me, great point there. As I mentioned, I grew up watching sci-fi films, but for me initially, my first, what was it? 1, 2, 3. Although you could say 4 films were all about like pure emotion. I suppose they were very personal films, whereas now you could say, sorry, my mom's my mom's saying hi, mommy, I love you. Sorry, my mom just drove by me. Basically, my first couple films, as you mentioned, my first 4 films were all about personal things. Blood, Sweat and Tears was all about really just wanting greatness, wanting to stop sucking at humanity. And then my next film, Brother, was about really trying to get over barriers made like that are completely superficial and false and fake, and connect with other people through that. And Rue was about overcoming regret and overcoming bad events that have happened. Spark was about falling in real love with a certain form of art. So as you mentioned there, they're all very personal. And I suppose for me, they've really all come just from stories that I am naturally drawn towards. And now that I suppose I'm becoming more, because those films were told at times where I still had a strong personal life. Like I was a very typical teenager in that I was spending time with friends, and I was focused on really trying to just be like better than I am with Blood, Sweat and Tears, and still having a lot of my focus in life on personal relationships, as in Rue, as in Brother, and Spark was just my love for filmmaking. But as I grow older, and this is something I was thinking about last night when kind of reflecting on all that's happening in the world right now, how as we grow older, it's very, it has to be said, and it's true, and everyone knows, I suppose, that you really begin to focus less on those personal things, and you focus more on the state of the world and the practical things, and your business and your income and all those kind of things. Though they become more naturally, as in this society that we're in, they become more prevalent, I think the word would be to use there. They become more relevant in your life as you grow older. And yeah, YouTube has become a much bigger part of my life, and as has filmmaking, as has trying to make some form of a living through making videos online. My primary interests have drifted from emotional side of things to professional side of things. My stories drift in that direction as well, which actually you put, like, I suppose you really highlighted there, which I find, I suppose, always focusing on the personal things, but kind of third year onwards, life becomes more about work in a good way, because I'm still
Yeah.
loving the work I'm doing. But yeah, I suppose in the same ways, my films and my interests become more based on the themes of work, and that's where Broken Reflection was based on YouTube and trying to make a living online, because I suppose that's something that has become at least a little bit more relevant in my life, as the relation side of things start to fade away. But then as I start getting, into actual committed relationships when I'm older, and I start spending, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to start spending more time with friends, but you never know. When I live closer to them, because I actually haven't seen any of my friends in 3 months or something because of COVID-19, but when I actually start like seeing these people again, I assume that maybe my films will drift back in the direction of those personal things. But yeah, you've really highlighted there, as I mentioned, it can change based on how you as a person change, what stories you want to tell, which is really
I mean, you touched on this earlier, but what's your next project after Broken Reflection?
Ooh, yeah. So actually, my mum was very funny. My mum is very supportive of my filmmaking, and she finds that it's going to be, like, I'm not actually planning to make a film this year. Well, at least a short film, anyways. You might say, because I already made a documentary and I did release a short film. But yeah, I'm not going to be making a short film this summer, which is always like a tradition for me almost at this point, since 2017. I've been making a film every summer, which isn't that long, And my mum's like, "Are you actually like not gonna make film this year?" But for me, I'm really trying to put a whole lot of work feature film script, so that when I finish it,
Okay.
I don't want to just make a feature film for the sake of making it. Can you hear me?
Yep, sort of.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Awesome. All right, brilliant.
It's all right.
Okay, so where was I again? Oh yes, what I'm gonna do. So basically, I'm working on that feature film script of mine right now, and as I mentioned, it's not that I want to just completely ignore making anything else and just put all of my effort into this, but I do want to really focus on telling this story, so that when I leave school, because I still have 2 full more years of school here in Ireland. When I leave school, I want to be able to say I have a feature film script, at the ready. And I don't want to just make a feature film for the sake of saying I made a feature film. And so I'm being cautious of that. I'm making sure this is a story I actually want to tell. And I feel compelled. It's a little weird for me to not be also making short films, etc. But with my focus on YouTube and my focus on client videos as well, I suppose it'd be a little too much to try and really make a good feature film script while also making short films every now and again. So although I will definitely return to making short films in the future, I love the simplicity of them, although they can still be quite complicated. I do like their simplicity, so I will return to them in the future. The feature film, I suppose, is what I'm focusing on right
Interesting.
now. But the script, I suppose. My next project is finishing a feature film script, to put it simply.
Well, I think that just about does it for today's for this week's episode. Thank you very much, Sean, for agreeing to come on. I am glad.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Social media links.
Hey,
which ones don't you mind being on there?
I suppose no. Yeah, I'll back in YouTube channel. Can you hear me?
Yep, there we go. We're back.
Okay, sorry. So my
It's all right.
Instagram Stellar Sean, and then my YouTube channel Stellar, and my second YouTube channel Sean Treacy. Those ones, all those three would be perfect. Yeah, and
I-
if you want to link my Twitter, go ahead. But no need.
So in the description will be his latest film, Broken Reflection, his Instagram, his and both his YouTube channels. So go check them out. Go check him out. Amazing filmmaker, and his second on his Stellar channel, he talks about some very interesting topics. I gave them a watch the other day. Very interesting. I actually found some joy in watching them. And also my latest film, which is from inspiration as of late events in the world, and then my Instagram, all of that stuff, the usual. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.